All right, I'm going to get going. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this webinar on the economic impact of post-secondary education. I want everyone to be aware that the webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be available to all participants after the end of the webinar, and it will be posted on our past events page in about a week's time. My name is Sandra Barone. I am the manager of the data analytics and modeling here at Trellis Strategies. For those of you who are not familiar with Trellis Strategies, we are a research company focused on advancing higher education and workforce development. We provide both quantitative and qualitative analyses, including fielding several national surveys of college students. This webinar was inspired by an economic impact analysis that ICUT commissioned Trellis Strategies to conduct last fall. There will be a link to the study placed in the chat, and I believe there will also be a link to our Trellis Strategies website. And if someone could also place a link to the ICUT website, that would be great. This study calculated the economic impact of 39 independent Texas colleges and universities on their regional economies. In total, these ICUT institutions add over $17 billion to the Texas economy each year, the equivalent of creating 120,000 jobs in their local communities. Combined, the institutions serve over 131,000 students each year, and over 70% of their alumni remain in Texas after graduating. In a time when families are struggling to afford higher education and some policy makers are questioning its value, we wanted to take a closer look at the importance of institutions of higher education to their local communities. I am joined today by three knowledgeable panelists. I'll introduce them and then we'll get going. Elizabeth Puthoff is the president of the Independent Colleges and Universities of Texas, also known as ICUT. ICUT is an association of 40 independent nonprofit colleges and universities across the state of Texas. Elizabeth has been with ICUT in a variety of roles since 2005 and became president in January 2023. As president, Elizabeth is ICUT's chief advocate, representing the association and its members at both the state and federal levels. Before taking on her current role, Elizabeth was the vice president for research and policy analysis. In that role, she spearheaded ICUT's legislative and research agendas, coordinating data collection and analysis to highlight the myriad impacts ICUT's member schools have on the students and communities they serve. I'm also joined by Justin Yancy, the president of the Texas Business Leadership Council, or TBLC. Justin has been the president of TBLC since July 2001. The Texas Business Leadership Council is a statewide network of CEOs and senior business executives who advance a long-term vision of a prosperous Texas in a globally competitive business environment. Justin is responsible for all aspects of the TBLC's mission and organization, including managing membership involvement and overseeing policy work and general operations. Justin also serves as executive director of the Foundation for a Globally Competitive Texas, a nonprofit organization created by Texas business leaders to facilitate the growth of a prosperous Texas. Before joining the TBLC, Justin served in the administrations of Governors George W. Bush and Rick Perry. Justin also currently serves as a member of many boards and organizations across the state of Texas. And last but not least, our final panelist is Dr. Charlie McCormick, the president of Schreiner University in Kerrville, Texas. Schreiner is one of the ICUT institutions that's included in the economic impact analysis. Dr. McCormick has been the president of Schreiner since January 2017, after previously serving as the provost and vice president for academic affairs. Before coming to Schreiner, Dr. McCormick served as a faculty member and administrator at Cabrini College in Pennsylvania. Dr. McCormick earned his undergraduate degree in English from Abilene Christian University, another ICUT member, before going on to earn a master's in anthropology from Texas A&M University and his PhD in folklore and folk life from the University of Pennsylvania. Thank you to all our panelists for joining us. We are honored to have you here. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping matters. Feel free to put questions or comments in either the chat or the Q&A section. We will try to answer them in real time, but also we plan to leave time for questions at the end of our presentation. We do have a lot to cover today, so if we don't get to your question, feel free to contact me or any of our panelists directly, and we will do our best to get you an answer. All right. I think I've covered everything I was supposed to before we get going. So I will start with a question for Elizabeth. ICUT commissioned Trellis to conduct an economic impact study to quantify the impact of your members on the Texas economy. Why was it important to you to conduct this study, and what was the most interesting or surprising result from the analysis?
Thanks so much, Sandra. I'll start by saying I am a self-proclaimed data nerd, so anything involving numbers in this study is something that greatly interests me. And so, as you said, in my previous role, I was research and policy analysis. And I would say 3 or 4 legislative sessions ago, we started throwing around the idea of an economic impact study. It has become one of the centerpieces of our advocacy work at the Capitol. It resonates very deeply with members of the legislature when they see not just our institutions producing students that help the Texas economy, but our institutions themselves as the economic drivers in their community. So the main way ICUT uses it is at the Capitol and testimony and meeting with members, but we've also determined it's a great tool for our institutions to take home to their communities, talk to the chamber, talk to their boards, and it has just been a really valuable. This year, because we have seen how important the numbers are to members of the legislature and the general public, is why we contacted Trellis to kind of a more sophisticated economic impact study than ICUT has done in the past. So, and one of the pieces that we included that I have found incredibly interesting, and I know the people right down the street found incredibly interesting, was the percentage of alumni that stay in the state. And it has been very eye-catching for many of them to know that they're educating Texas students that are staying in Texas and being very valuable members of the economy.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Yes, I agree. I also found it quite surprising that over all the institutions, 72% of the alumni remain in Texas. So that is a huge boon to our Texas economy. Along those lines, Charlie, I want to turn to you as the president of one of those universities. Schreiner is a relatively small university with around 1,200 students, yet it contributes over $80 million to its local economy, and that's the local county, right, Kerr County, each year. I was particularly surprised to learn that 45% of recent Schreiner alum remain in Kerr County and 85% of their alum remain in Texas, so even more than that average. From your perspective, what is one of the most important ways in which Schreiner impacts its local economy?
Well, thank you, Sandra. It's great to be here on the panel today. And I will say that I was surprised by those numbers too. And I just want to note that it's way too easy for some of us, especially at smaller colleges, to miss really important parts of the story when you don't have an army of people working in an institutional research office or alumni affairs to keep track of all that information. So having access to that sort of information, I think, is really important to all schools, especially to small schools. And I encourage everybody to figure out some way to get it. And let me publicly thank President Puthoff here for making sure that all of her independent colleges and universities in Texas have access to this really nuanced and comprehensive economic impact information. And let me know too that, when you have clear evidence about where your graduates are living and working, I really think it changes the dynamic of the programs that you offer. So if our students are going to be living in Kerr County in Texas, then we want to provide them with the education that they need to be wildly successful. And that means preparing them for the industries that are and will be coming to our county and to the state. I just think it would be reckless to do otherwise. And in order to do that, then we got to be really aggressive in developing programs that are appropriate for first generation and Pell eligible students, which reflects our demographic, so that those students are all career ready when they graduate, so that they can change really their personal life trajectories and the trajectories of their entire families in some cases. So we've been aggressive in developing programs that will encourage new industries to locate in Kerrville, precisely because we have an educated workforce in things like mechatronics, viticulture, aviation, regenerative farming, computer science, rural banking. We're trying to match graduates with the emerging economy and accelerating the emergence of this economy because we have the graduates that they need. And I think that's a real and important impact Schreiner has on our local and regional community.
Yeah, that's great. And that you're exactly highlighted where I was going to turn next. I'm going to get responses from all the panelists, but I wanted to start with Justin. One of the most important contributions of especially these regional institutions of higher education is the development of a skilled workforce in the region. What are some of the ways, Dr. McCormick just mentioned some of the ways Schreiner is really involved with their local community. What are some other ways you've seen universities and local businesses work together to maintain a skilled local workforce? And how does this collaboration impact the perceived value of post-secondary education in the community?
Yeah, thank you, Sandra. I appreciate that question. And I want to thank Trellis Strategies for having us. And also, I want to hats off to ICUT for this study. It is very important information for not just the legislature, but as you said, communities, universities to have. Partnerships between the business community, employers, and all higher education institutions are important, and including community colleges. They're critical for what we're seeing now, which is a very rapidly changing demands on our workforce. And from our experience at TBLC, we've seen tangible outcomes from the collaborations. Particularly, I might point out the Texas Workforce Partnership Initiative, which is a work we are doing alongside the Texas Association of Community Colleges, Business Roundtable, which is the umbrella organization of business councils and roundtables in DC, and the Business Higher Education Forum. And what this initiative is doing, it has three main goals. Co-developing credentials of value, aligning curriculum with real-world employer needs, and expanding work-based learning programs that provide students hands-on experience. We've seen the model already show strong results. We started a couple years ago with this work after House Bill 8 was passed, in El Paso, San Antonio, Dallas, and expansion will start later this year and through next year into East Texas, Houston, South Texas, and Austin. And again, that catalyst for that change is House Bill 8. It was, as I think everyone here knows, passed in 2023 by the 88th legislature, and it still is playing a major role to incentivize colleges to improve their workforce-aligned outcomes. The response from many institutions have been to things like streamlining their internal process, update, create new industry-informed credentials, which I think is that's really critical. And the result is students will graduate though with skills that employers are seeking, and are more likely to go into jobs that will allow them to build careers, and often stay where they are, stay in Texas. And just a side note, Dr. McCormick, it's not really a surprise to me that people want to stay in Kerrville. If you've been there, it's a great place to live and build a community, and it goes for all of Texas. I mean, but it's good information to have. But why all this matters is these partnerships between employers and institutions. It's very important for the workforce, and they also elevate the value of post-secondary education. When students will see this clear connection between their coursework and real real world opportunities, it validates their return on that investment. And for employers, it builds confidence that the talent pipeline is working. It's aligned and with regional and industry needs. So it's just a win-win for students, institutions, and really our broader economy. Just one example is Alamo Colleges, where we started. The second area we went to in San Antonio. Alamo College's district is doing things to improve their connectivity, communication with the community and employers. They have a new, not new anymore, but an industry account executive role so that employers have one point of contact specific to their sector. That's very helpful. We found from employers it's already hard to know how to start these programs. That's part of the work we're doing, is how we can increase the ease and not that it's going to be easy, but the ease and the pathway and maybe a menu and a path to start these relationships with community colleges and with four-year institutions, public, private. But Alamo College has also created a Chancellor Advisory Council to have C-suite business leaders provide direct feedback to leaders at colleges. And interestingly, today, Alamo College has announced a new partnership with St. Mary's in San Antonio. They're going to, I believe they say, first of a kind dual credit faculty expansion initiative. Their goal is to credential up to 100 high school teachers as dual credit in dual credit faculty over the next 2 years. So these will be some of the core classes, English, history, and government dual credit courses that are at high need throughout Bexar County and really all of Texas. So teachers will be able to receive graduate level training at no cost to them with a 3-year commitment to teach dual credit courses. So that's just one of the ways, as an example of that we're seeing some great partnerships between institutions and employers. And it's critical. And again, as I said earlier, fast changing economy.
Thanks. Those are exciting and great ideas to hear. Elizabeth, Dr. McCormick, do you have any other things you've run into in your interactions?
Well, I think I'm lucky that I get to visit all 40 of our campuses and see what they're up to and the unique nature of each campus. I think oftentimes in my interactions, people don't naturally associate private and independent higher education with workforce development. And it's an area that we work very hard on, making sure that people know we're very involved in this. So we have institutions in urban centers, we have rural institutions, we have small institutions and large institutions, and each one of those gives a unique set of opportunities for their students. And whether those are internship programs or mentorship programs, especially in the Dallas area, a lot of our institutions have strong connections with Bank of America, with Southwest Airlines. And again, it's just not something that I find that is front of mind when people start thinking about ICUT institutions and what they have to offer. So one of my joys this summer will be to travel around and go to as many campuses as possible and get to enjoy some of the hidden gems of those partnerships. So I'm looking forward to it.
And from an institutional perspective, Sandra, as we've increasingly had these conversations with local employers and business leaders, we've discovered that our conversations have become, I don't know what the best way to describe it is, but they feel more authentic. And, the folks that we have at the table with us now are really more eager to have these conversations with us because well, for one thing, when we can show them the economic impact study, it's a clear indication to them in ways that you can forget sometimes that even a small institution matters in a great big way locally. And I think these conversations are so authentic, too, because we come to the table trying to help businesses and employers try to solve a problem that luckily is going to benefit our students as well. And so it really does become a sort of win-win. And I want to note that, these conversations haven't made us abandon our commitment to the liberal arts. We still care deeply about all of those learning skills, habits of mind, outcomes. But it's pushed us beyond a simple devotion to the liberal arts, and it's sort of expanded our imagination to acknowledge and remember that all sorts of learning and training and experiences are important to cultivate. We created a new Center for Talent and Workforce Development division on campus that really focuses on employer engagement and the development of student skills at the micro-credential, certification levels. And in a way Justin has just talked about, we found that when we can get in alignment with each other locally, the high schools, the college, municipal economic development organizations, employers, everybody's value becomes amplified in that context. Everybody benefits from that alignment. I'll just share one quick example of a way in which we've worked with local employers. We've got a nursing program like a lot of our institutions do, and our regional community, like I think every community in the U.S., has way too few nurses to fill the existing need. So we partnered with our local medical center, which is called Peterson Health, to create a program that we're calling H3, Health and Hope in the Hill Country of Texas. And this program cultivates local students who expressed a desire and willingness to stay local in Kerr County so that they can serve their community as nurses. And part of our role in this partnership has been to build nursing programs to support the arc of a professional nurse's career, really from a licensed professional nursing program. I mean, that's, clearly vocational training to a master's of nursing and all the steps in between there. And then Peterson Health provides significant scholarship support and a golden handshake for these nurses so that they can acquire the knowledge and develop the necessary skills to fulfill really all of their professional ambitions. They'll have an extraordinary and well-paying career, and they can take care of our local community well into the future. So when we can achieve alignment on those sorts of partnerships, the value of Peterson Health is dramatically enhanced, and the value of Schreiner University is dramatically enhanced.
That's great. Thank you all for sharing your stories. I think it's really important in this time where there might be a lot of questioning of the value of higher ed that we keep amplifying these stories, because as you just highlighted, it really is a win for everyone involved. And I don't know if most importantly, but bringing those students up to a successful career, which is really why these institutions exist in the first place. So next, I wanted, since we did just end the legislative session, I do want to discuss the recently passed Texas Senate Bill 1786. This legislation makes student transfers to independent colleges and universities in Texas a fundable outcome for community colleges. It builds on the House Bill 8 that Justin was referring to. The bill also modifies the definition of credentials of value by increasing the wage threshold needed for a credential to be funded by the community college outcomes formula. How do you'll have three different perspectives on here on how you see these changes impacting community college relationships with independent colleges and local businesses. And I'll just I don't know who wants to jump in first.
I can jump in real quickly. I think that the passage of the bill was a great acknowledgement of existing work that our institutions have always done with their local community colleges. And having that recognized and codified is just a really important part of this. I think the number of transfers that we do have from ICUT institutions into their local community colleges is much higher than a lot of people believe, because we've always had such strong transfer partnerships in place, whether it's a 2+2 nursing program or just generally strong articulation agreements. So we were exceptionally pleased that Chairman Creighton took on the task of changing the definitions in the statute. As those of us who work in higher education in the legislature know, sometimes just a few words missing make a whole lot of difference. It was a heavy lift to get it done, and we're thankful for all of our partners who supported the change. I know our presidents are extremely excited about it, as are their community college colleagues.
Yeah, if I can go, it's a big deal, and it's great that that it will build on the momentum from House Bill 8. So as we know now, it's just whether, the small change but it's a huge outcome to have private institutions built in now to the formula, and transfers, I should say, to private institutions built into the formula. It's an opportunity, I guess, for private schools that haven't before to begin or increase investing in these transfer pathways. I know a lot already do, but it's a big positive, and it's going to mean more options for students, greater flexibility and access to what I think the unique strengths of Dr. McCormick mentioned, that sometimes smaller or more specialized institutions can provide. It's a big win for students for sure. And then also another change I wanted to mention was the changes in the definition of credentials of value. This, I would say, is a major signal from the legislature that outcomes matter, and one could surmise might serve as their response to concerns about the public perception of the value of higher education, where House Bill 8 prioritized funding for credentials that led to measurable labor market value. Now, Senate Bill 1786 increases that wage threshold for a credential to be considered of value, rather than comparing to a post-completion wage from those of high school graduates statewide average. The new standard is the statewide self-sustaining wage. The new standard will be the statewide self-sustaining wage as defined by the Trigency, which is currently a little over $30,000 for a single adult. That's also a statewide average. It's going to also shorten the return on investment window for associate degrees from 10 years to 5 years, which is going to push, it's going to be more pressure on institutions to show that programs can lead quickly to well-paying jobs. So it's definitely, we're very supportive of House Bill 8 and think that these changes overall are going to be very positive. And we're going to continue our work with community colleges and four-year institutions, both public and private, in any way we can to help keep building bridges that will allow for more quickly to get fewer courses and fewer courses that don't lead to jobs, fewer courses, and the more courses that do lead to jobs and lead to careers is beneficial. So that's why we're involved in this process. It certainly helps the economy. So, but why, I guess, last thing I'll say, why this matters is that these reforms are building or rebuilding or building public trust in the value of higher education by its having funding tethered to accountability and economic mobility. It incentivizes deeper industry college alignment, and which we have to have. And programs must be responsive to labor market needs and provide real world pathways like work-based learning. So this is just another piece that's just really important to us. But from the business community's perspective, this is exactly the progress we wanted to see with graduates equipped with in-demand skills, more diverse, accessible talent pipeline, and a higher education system that is nimble, responsive, and return on investment driven, which we are definitely seeing. So it's while it's some changes, the still overall plan of House Bill 8 and the new funding formula really, I think, is one that I can say, because I've heard from others, has become the envy of the nation, and national organizations are helping to replicate it in some other states. But we're proud that Texas is here first, and it's making a big difference.
I think from the institutional perspective, I echo what Elizabeth and Justin just shared. This is going to only improve our relationships with our community college colleagues. Relationships which, as Elizabeth noted, have already been quite good, but which had this artificial obstacle placed in front of them that the new legislation removes. And just to put a pin in, I think a point Justin was making, that, while the legislature's done its part, I think some independent colleges and universities, and I count Schreiner among those, really have more work to accomplish here. At Schreiner, for example, we're in the process of being very intentional in developing crosswalks that acknowledges the important learning that takes place not just in the credit-bearing programs, but in vocational programs and all sorts of associate degree programs as well, but particularly in those vocational programs, and how all of that learning can count for as much credit as possible in our existing baccalaureate programs. I know some schools have been doing this for a long time, but a lot of us have not. And it's a muscle we at Schreiner believe we need to develop. And we've already started on articulating these crosswalks with our faculty.
That's great to hear, and that'll be a huge benefit to students, because you do hear the stories of students who got their associate's degree, they're doing well, but they want to go on, and then they show up at their local college and find out that they practically have to start over. And it's exciting to hear that institutions are hearing that and working to find ways to work together and move us all forward. So great. Well, we've touched on my next question a bit, but I want to really focus in. So recently, the conversation around higher education has been changing a little bit. There seems to be a growing distrust of quote unquote higher education as a whole, yet with students, parents, and legislators questioning its value. Yet when individuals are asked about their local institution, their local community college, the college in their back door, they respond overwhelmingly positively. And in a recent study about a year ago, over 80% of students and parents, I think it was of voters, said they still believed in the value of higher education. So that's very encouraging. What do you believe is the reason for this disparity between their like of their actual institutions and their fear of the institute or distrust of the institution? And what can institutions do to maintain that trust and support from their local community?
Well, maybe I'll start this time with the institutional response. And
sounds great.
And I'll just note that it's relatively obvious, but that education is still in most parts of this country and for most institutions very much a local and a regional enterprise. And that's maybe not true for some of the most prestigious schools, but for most of us, and certainly at Schreiner, our students are our community's neighbors, and they bag the community's groceries, and they sit on the pews beside the community at church on Sundays. And one day they're going to be the community's employees and employers, and they're good friends. And so my guess is that building local trust and support, it probably gets more difficult to cultivate as a school's national profile improves. After all, in a lot of those cases, students come from outside the community and they leave the community as soon as they graduate. So at Schreiner, we've really tried to focus on improving our local profile. That's our primary goal, and really reminding our local and regional community that our Schreiner University is their Schreiner University, and making sure our Schreiner community enters fully into the life of the local and regional community. Mentioned before our commitment to engineering and aviation, which we did because of some new companies that were moving here locally. We're very excited about that. But I might just provide one example that seems sort of trivial, but which is not. If we're really going to be part of the community and have the community's trust, then we not only have to take something from that community, we have to give back too. And I don't know why I thought of this now, but Schreiner started participating in a local lighted holiday parade about 5 years ago. And we put some lights on some of our vans, and we asked our students to walk in the parade and sing the fight song. I don't really think it was our best effort, but I bet I heard from 100 people that they had no idea that we had so many students at Schreiner. And this was just a small sample of students that actually participated. But seeing a group like that en masse at a community function, everybody's reminded that the local college, even when it's small, plays really an oversized role in making the community.
Yeah, and I think the local nature, I think Charlie hit on it well. People being able to see and touch and feel something is a very important connection. And I think so many of our campuses are welcoming of the community onto campus. I mean, if you happen to be in Kerrville, you can stop by Charlie's campus and see the beer garden and the pickleball courts and the sand volleyball, right? So there's all these small facilities on campuses that I think are often open to community members. Hosting events on campus gives an opportunity for some crossover. Dual credit on campus makes students feel a lot more welcome. And it feels a little more real than if you're thinking about maybe the large university down the street. Because I think for many of our rural communities, I mean, campus is kind of the heart of the community. And a lot of the facilities that a university has to offer would probably not be possible in some ways in small places without the university being there. So I think it immediately forms that strong connection from the beginning. And I think that is why that local trust is there. And I think even some of our institutions in urban areas work very, very hard on community outreach and serving the needs of their neighbors, and whether that's retail on campus, adult learning opportunities, any myriad of reasons for them to be able to interact, even in a large urban setting, sets up the trust that's there and the value, even if it is not the 4-year degree or the PhD. Maybe we're looking at something on a smaller scale.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Elizabeth, you're absolutely correct. I mean, Texans still show strong trust in their local colleges and universities. But there is a national narrative, skepticism going on, and which we push back on as best we can from our work at the TPLC. And from that business perspective, we believe this is a disconnect. Stems from a couple things: perception of the value and proximity to outcomes, but it's also human nature. I mean, people always talk about, negatively about Congress, except for their member of Congress. The one they had lunch with, they have to know that person's great, but the rest of them, they're just, So it's a national thing that we're at, and a statewide. There's a narrative going on. So, but when you look at it in the abstract, that's how you hear these national headlines and feel this way. But then, as you've all said better than I am, when you see businesses partnering on workforce programs and nursing students interning locally, or a graduate with a welding certificate who's now thriving and maybe changing an entire family outcome and direction, that's a tangible impact on the community and workforce, and builds credibility. And I think the most important thing is when families can see how a degree or credential translates into a career, a meaningful career, especially in their own community and region, they're more likely to believe in the system. And when businesses see that graduates are well prepared, going back to these partnerships and working on local labor market information and making sure that their employers are working closely with institutions, they're more likely to invest and hire and advocate for these institutions. So it's that Elizabeth mentioned, it's trust. And it's a trust, and it's a trust loop, and it works best when education and workforce are synced up.
Great, thank you. At this point, I'd like to encourage anyone in the audience who has any questions or comments or areas that they would like the panelists to address to drop a question in the chat. I'm going to give a minute. And if I might just ask you all, I want to give a minute because I want to be sure that we get those audience questions if we do have them.
Is there an opportunity for organizations to work with Trellis on a similar social impact study, economic impact study, and how would they do that?
Oh, yes. We are actually in discussions with several other institutions and I'm blanking on the word, groups of institutions such as ICUT. So you can reach out to me or Andrea. Can you plop a general email in the chat that would get them to our
Yes.
to Jay's team. But we are happy. And one of the reasons ICUT chose to work with us, I do want to mention, is we're very flexible. We worked with ICUT to develop the product that was right for them and their institutions. And in that case, we really wanted to minimize the lift on the institutions themselves. So we used publicly available data to the extent possible and just supplemented with data that only the universities would have. But other systems want a much more comprehensive. They want to go into individual vignettes from each institution or delve further into the social impact. So one of the things we're very proud of in general with all our products is that we really get pleasure from working with our customers. We don't have that cookie cutter product that just everybody who comes to us gets the exact same thing out of the box. So we'd be happy to talk to you about what your needs are at your institution or system.
I might add very quickly that not only have we partnered with Trellis for our economic impact study, we're also doing a series of policy briefs that Trellis has been helping us with on workforce and on college fit. So various areas where we want to explore what our sector is contributing in certain areas. We're doing work in that space. So just not economic impact research, but larger policy research that's helping inform our agenda.
And I guess that reminds me, I should also add that we work with a lot of institutions on our survey side of the house. We can do surveys, structured interviews, focus groups that can also really help, especially some of these smaller institutions that don't have large research staff on campus, to get questions answered about their alumni, their current students, or even just like faculty satisfaction to help them change internal policies. So please reach out. We are happy to work with you. And then I did get a question for the panel. How can community colleges and universities do a better job of integrating community and adult education into 4-credit programs to support community members who want to upskill or re-enter the workforce in a different field?
I don't know that I have the full answer to that question, but I will note something I noted or said before was that, we have to get into the habit of expanding our imaginations, that this is absolutely possible, and prior learning of all sorts can be applied to new learning environments and should be applied to new learning environments. So to echo something else we've talked about here, trust is very important in building those relationships between the folks who are working into the maybe not credit-bearing courses and credit-bearing programs, to get together and hash out these crosswalks is something that will take a little time, though, as Justin suggests, we don't have all the time in the world to do this.
I might add that, it's obvious that the business community and institutions have to stay, or need to become and stay tightly aligned in workforce needs. And that's credentialing, upskilling that's critical to our economy. And this is not a discussion on AI, and there's plenty of discussions on AI to go to, but things are changing. And if there's any truth, and there's got to be some truth to it, that we're going to see even more rapid growth and change in the economy or I should say in jobs over the next 5 years, 10 years. And so it's just being flexible and staying aligned with each other, and not just to this question about adult education or credentials or upskilling, but just in general. Blame is not the right word, but it's certainly not all to be put on institutions. Employers, depending on the size of the employer, it can be difficult, or they don't understand how to approach a community college or a 4-year institution. or they don't, have the time. If you're hoping to make next quarters, and you don't think, well, you've talked through some things and feel like, well, this may take 2 years before we start seeing a payoff. Sometimes it's just not feasible. But so it's not. It takes just a relationship. Employers have, that, which is part of why we're involved, is make sure that employers can see a clearer path and have a playbook maybe to build on these relationships and how to reach out, which is why what Alamo College is doing with the one industry, representative is really helpful when that's feasible and makes sense to do. Because again, if you're a large company, you may do your own training. If you're a mid-sized company, or a small company, you're probably not. And so it's just open. We need open communication and partnerships. There's no, and together we are making, because we've already seen it. We're making differences. We, as the state of Texas, is making a big difference, and that really boils down to opportunities for students, and it goes all the way up to just helping the economy. So it's a win-win-win.
That was a great question. Thank you for sharing. And I love to hear these ideas. And I think I want to echo what the panelists said, that we need to keep those lines of communication and keep talking to each other about things. Like that is a great idea, to have one person who's assigned, and at a smaller university in a smaller place, it could just be a part of that person's job, so that local businesses have a place to go. Take the time to put together at least a university-wide advisory committee, so that people on campus and people in the employers are actually just talking face to face once or twice a year and getting ideas. So I just want to encourage everyone to continue these discussions, and you can reach out to any of our panelists if you're from an institution and you're looking for ideas of how to improve communication on your own campus. I think I just want to open it up to our panelists and see if they'd like to say anything else. And then if there are more questions, we have a few minutes, and feel free to send them in. And if not, I'll let everyone just leave us with some closing remarks. Justin.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the narrative, or the consistent story about the value of higher education, any post-secondary education, leading to higher earnings and stability, life stability. I say job stability, but it's really life stability and stronger local economies. Those stories have to continue to be told, and that's on all of us, employers, associations like the TBLC, institutions. Marching in the parade is part of that story. It builds those things, it builds those relationships. And so as long as we're all doing that, I think with those partnerships, we'll continue to improve. And I guess maybe ultimately, I would just say that when students see a clear path from classroom to career, and communities see higher education driving local growth, economic growth, it builds trust again, and it strengthens local talent pipelines, which become statewide and national pipelines, and reinforces higher ed's value just across the board. So this is I feel positive about where we're headed in Texas, and we're doing the right things, in my opinion. And there's work to do for businesses, there's work to do for institutions, all of us, but we're doing it, as we're on the right track.
And to build off of what Justin said, I think all that talking and trust building is very important. I would say that for institutions, we also need to have more of a bias towards action, especially after we talk to local employers and stakeholders. And we need to make sure we're not just talking, but we're taking action on the very good ideas that they have. And I would add finally that I have a local voice, and I try to use it here, But really under Elizabeth's leadership, the independent college presidents in Texas, we're also using our collective power to spread the word that all of our institutions have a big impact locally and across the state. And, she's used this impact study, economic impact study, to help us all talk relatively at the same time among our many local constituencies so that we can really amplify all of our individual voices. And I just think that's very, very powerful.
And I think I would close with, I think the conversation today, and people who know me hear me say this probably way too often, there truly is a place for everybody in this landscape in Texas, for students, for adult learners. And I think taking the 40 ICUT institutions as a whole, you can just see the diversity of opportunities. And in partnership with our community college partners, with the four-year public universities, and with business, all of us working together. And it's not a zero-sum game here. We all have to work together to meet the needs of all different types of students and their individual needs. And so I feel very lucky that I get to sit in a place where I can have that larger view of what all of our institutions have to offer. And so I would, it's something that we celebrate often within our institutions. We have a lot in common, but we also have a lot of individuality. So I think that some of the movement we've seen in the legislature this session and in these conversations show the growth towards everybody working together to meet these really, really unique workforce needs coming forward.
Yeah, that's a great note to end on. A lot of Trellis research tends to focus on the student, and we do find every year the number of student personas, there is no longer an average student. We have workers, we have parents, we have students who want to be upskilling, first generation students, the whole gamut. And so I would agree with Elizabeth, that is important. There's room for everybody, and there's room to grow, and us working all together will get us to a stronger place for everyone. So I want to really thank all of our panelists for joining us. This has been a great discussion. I hope we can have more, and I will let you go. I know you all need to rest up after you've had graduations and a long legislative session. So we really appreciate you taking your time to share with us here today. And we look forward to seeing everyone soon. Thanks.